Hello again, whiskey friends. I'm Durell, the Whiskey Saint. Welcome back for another video. If you're new to the channel, please hit that like and subscribe. Definitely helps us out a bit. So guys, today with this video, what we are going to be doing is going over my top 20 whiskeys of the year. Yep, that's right, top 20. Disregarded the top 10s, the top 5. Just wanted to give you a decent sized list of some of the really good stuff that I tasted this year. So kept it at 20 versus the conventional 5 and 10. And we're just going to dive right into it. Stay tuned. I'm going to kick this show off. Cheers. Welcome back, guys. Thanks for sticking with me. This one's going to be fun. I like to showcase, a lot of good whiskeys that I've had over the year, because we don't really talk about it too much, individually amongst, ourselves. We're like, oh, this was good or this was good. But for us, what we've been doing pretty much all year is actually scoring and reviewing, ranking these. So it was a little easier for us to just kind of filter to see what scored the most, down from top 20 all the way down to, last place or whatever the case is in a sense, So with that being said, our ranking sheet, as you guys been following us for a bit, you've been seeing some of the videos that we place with, the scoring rankings on some whiskey. So depending how far you've been with us, you may know some of the bottles that may be on this list today. All right, we're going to dive right in, guys, and start with our whiskey, or my whiskey, which is number 20 on the list. And just for full transparency, everything on this list is a bottle that I own currently. There was one bottle that I didn't have that I actually made a trade for that was really, really good. So that actually made the list because otherwise it wasn't. So all bottles that we own that we purchased in 23 or got in 23, and it had to been released in 23 as well. So there was a couple bottles that were really, really, really high on my list, but I got them in 2023, but they released in 22, so I couldn't count those. But coming in at number 20, guys, we are at a lovely bottle of K-Luke Barrel Strength Batch 4. So this brand came into light for me this year, actually. I didn't know anything about K-Luke prior to that, but had, I believe, this batch being the first one I tasted. And I was like, holy crap, this is crazy, crazy good. So Jonathan Masano over at K-Luke, he's blending some Kentucky whiskey, Kentucky bourbon, along with some Indiana bourbon, and just doing some crazy magician work, man. Like, it's nuts. Like, these bottles are fantastic. But that came in at an 88. Oh, sorry, an 84. And you'll see as we go through this, guys, we got the score and the price of all these bottles listed on this slide for us to take a peek at. So coming in at $115, which isn't bad. It's not cheap, but not really expensive either. But for the type of blend quality you're getting out of these bottles, I think they're like a no-brainer and a must-buy. But yep, that's number 20, guys. K-Luke Barrel Strength Batch 4 coming in at an 84 out of 100 at $115. We're going to move it along to number 19, and this was a surprise. This is Peerless High Rye Bourbon. I'll tell you why it's a surprise. When I first opened this bottle earlier this year with Jeffrey Wack, I was like, what the heck is this? It was kind of funky. It was weird. Didn't really like it. Revisited it maybe a couple weeks later, and I was like, holy crap, this is really good. Then another couple weeks later, and it was just fantastic. It just kept getting better and better and better. Kind of like what Calumet 16 did for me last year. That bottle, I believe, made my top 10. But when I first had it, I just thought it was like funky and just weird. But progressively got better with each pour. But this came in at an 84 as well, guys, at a price of $115 as well. So moving on to my number 18 whiskey of the year. We are at another company that's fairly new to me. I've heard of them, but never got a chance to taste them until this year. And that's a Still Austin Cask Strength. This one in particular was picked by Nancy Fraley herself. So you got to know it's probably pretty good. But that one right there, like Jeff mentioned in his videos, all like just blueberries and just dark berry forward, kind of reminds me of a baby Joseph Magnus cigar blend. You know, it's a really, really good whiskey. But that also came in at an 84, guys, and that one was $100. So not too bad, you know, especially for a bottle that she's blending with the quality of whiskey that's in that bottle. Moving along to number 17, guys. Another company that's near and dear to me, Foregate. Foregate Kelvin 60. Got the pleasure of tasting this bottle with Bill Straub from Foregate, along with a bunch of people when we were at Bourbon and the Banks. And I was like, holy crap, this is really good. 8-year Kentucky whiskey, finished in new charred cask. So it's a double oaked product from a very known distillery out in Kentucky. And this thing was killer. 125.6 proof. You know, just super, super good. Super good. Foregate's putting out banger after banger anyway, right? So it was pretty much expected for it to be pretty good, but it did surprise me when I first got to try it. And that bottle right there scored an 84 as well, guys, coming in at a price of $200. If you guys know Foregate, you know all their bottles are basically from $180 to $250, depending on if it's like a special release or so. So a little pricey, but like I mentioned with K-Luke, they're above, you know, what you would think for like a non-age stated product, but just a blending quality, you know, sets it apart. Same thing with Foregate. They have blended some crazy barrels and putting out some really, really good whiskey, guys. Moving along to number 16. This right here is a brand that I've seen all around the place, you know, a couple years ago, but just never really knew much about them or pulled a trigger. What's funny is that they're right down the street from me. It's Copper and Cask, guys, and you're going to see this pop up again on my list a little deeper into the list. But this right here is a brand new release that they did. It's a small batch version of some single barrels that they were putting out prior to this one. So it's an 8-year MGP bourbon that was aged in Florida. Then they had multiple barrels of that, batched them all, then put out this version versus the single barrels that they were doing earlier. But this right here is some really, really good MGP. Really, really dark, nice profile. It's a little different. It's off profile to an extent from like the conventional MGP that you may be used to that's on the market now. And I think that just you can contribute that to the Florida aging process on that whiskey, because it definitely changed, you know, that profile that I'm used to, but in a good way. It was really, really good. You know, that's coming in at an 85, guys, at a price of $74.99. So let's move over to number 15. 15, company or distillery that I found out about this year as well, from Mr. Wack himself. I think the first bottle I tasted was a Hard Truth Caramel Malted Rye, and I was like, holy crap. This thing was just killer, killer, killer. That probably, I think, just missed my top 20, but it's such a good bottle. This one right here is brand new to Hard Truth. We had the pleasure of tasting these straight out the barrel when we were doing a barrel pick back in May, I believe it was. But this is the PX Sherry Brandy finish. This one came in at an 85. It's $95, guys. I don't know the age. I remember when we were there, they were mentioning, I believe they were about 3 to 4 years at that time. So I think they're still in that age frame. But Hard Truth is doing some crazy, crazy stuff. Like, their product is so young, but just absolutely ridiculous. So I cannot wait. And I've been telling people this for a while. You know, when Hard Truth hits that 6-year, 7-year marker, I am scared to how good these products are going to be that they're putting out. If they're this good right now at 2 to 3 years, come on. Like, absolutely ridiculous. But that scored an 85, guys. $95 for that bottle. And if you guys see those, I don't know if they're hitting stores. It was a distillery release, but those are a must-buy. Absolutely must-buy for those finished ones. They are so, so good. Moving along, guys, to number 14. We are at my favorite distillery in the world, Heaven Hill. This is Elijah Craig's B523, which may have not made everybody's list, but when I had this, I was pleasantly surprised. It scored an 86, which isn't super high, but it wasn't low either, you know, considering. I remember being really good as well. When I blinded these recently, I believe the A beat out the B. But when I first did my rankings, I stuck with the scores on that, and this came in at an 86. Elijah Craig normally between $69 to $89, depending where you can find them. But typically really good whiskey for what it is. 12-year age-stated Kentucky bourbon, at a price between 60 to 90 bucks, so it's not bad. And all their batches this year have been pretty solid, which is nice coming back from, the 22s and the 21s that kind of missed a little bit, so it was a pleasant surprise to, be back on that gravy train of some really good Elijah Craig barrel proof. But we are going to move this along, guys, to number 13 on this list of 2023. We have another K. Luke, and this was the one I mentioned earlier. I actually did not have a bottle of this. A buddy of mine sent me samples of this one and batch 7, but he didn't like it as much as I did. He enjoyed it, but I made a little trade for a backup bottle that I had over here of something, and I was able to get this one, which is already opened, but I didn't care about that. I had a couple samples from this bottle itself, and I just absolutely love this. It's the K. Luke Keenan Reserve. It's a Cabernet finished bourbon, Kentucky and Indiana as well, but just that color, guys, look at that. I disappear when I go in front of that. Absolutely ridiculous. I'm a sucker for fruity finished whiskeys, and this is all of that for me. Probably my top finished whiskey of this year. This thing is just so good. But came in at a score of 86, guys, and this one's a little more pricier than their conventional barrel strengths. The barrel strength's usually around 109 bucks. This one's like an extra 20 bucks or so, but I think it's well worth it for the type of whiskey you're getting in that bottle right there. Delicious bottle. Number 12, guys, Michter's 10 for 2023. This bottle's probably made everybody's top 10 and top 5 of this year, or is going to make it. It was just fantastic. My only problem is that I had tasted a lot of, in my opinion, really good whiskey as well that just was a little bit above that. This scored an 87, which is no slouch for us. That's up there with the best. Obviously, it made this list here. But these bottles for 2023, guys, are stellar. This one right here is a E batch. The score for the 87 was on my A batch, which I found to be better. I haven't scored this one, but I would imagine it's maybe just a couple points lower. Not drastically. It just doesn't, for me, finish the same way that the A did. For a 94.4 proof, you would think that it doesn't really have a finish, but these new Michters that are well above the 10-year age stated are just absolutely fantastic. It's the closest that you're going to get to a Michter's 20. These are 14, 15 years old, just absolutely fantastic. Are a little pricey, 185, depending on where you get them, upwards to maybe a little over 200, so it is pricey bourbon. But when you factor what you're really getting and the quality of the stuff in this, like I said, compared to Michter's 20, which is retail now probably $1,200 or $1,500, to have this at, a quarter of the price or even less than that, I think it's worth the buy for the 2023s. I wouldn't really say that for the 22s and 21s. They weren't as good to me. This thing just blew my mind the first time I had them. Really good. Moving on to number 11, guys, is a Knob Creek single barrel. This was actually sent to me from our dear friend, Big Vic. This bottle is from, where is it from? Actually, I'm not sure. It's called the Dram Code, but you got a little potato sticker on the back called Beam Tack. It's a 9-year. Oh, actually, Liquor Rex, the Dram Code, is the store. But yeah, 9-year single barrel. They all come in at 120 proof. But this thing was ridiculous. Probably one of my favorite 9 years, if not my favorite 9-year Knob Creek pick that I've had. The 14s and 15s were, a different level than that. But when I first had that, and I know Jeff can say this, pretty much everybody that's had that bottle can say the same. It's absolutely fantastic. Just a little off profile, which I like. Still has that cherry that I tend to get on some of the higher aged Knob Creeks. I definitely got it on the 12-year cash strength. It's just a really nice cherry vibe, spice, finish just goes on and on and on that bottle. I could talk that thing up a lot. You know, at $69 coming in at 87, it's beating some of the, the bottles that are almost double the price, if not more, right? So that definitely says a lot to that single barrel right there, guys. Heck of a pick, heck of a pick. So we are moving into the top 10, guys. Top 10, here we go. Little Book Chapter 7. And that may be a surprise for some people as well, because Little Book's been off their game, I think, since literally batch 3. But this thing was crazy. Like, reading the specs on this, like, you would think that it's going to be like some hodgepodge, like bad whiskey. This thing is nuts, right? So we got 18-year Kentucky, 17-year Kentucky, 10-year Kentucky straight rye, a 9-year bourbon, a malted rye or malted whiskey, 4-year, another 4-year rye. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, just literally, it's like a Frankenstein blend, but this thing was actually really, really, really good. I put this up against my favorite batch, which was the Little Book Chapter 3, and that 3 just edged it out ever so slightly, but I think on any given day that may even beat it. Like, that's a really, really good Little Book for a change, which is nice. Coming at $140, you kind of want to have some good whiskey in that bottle, right? It's like I said, it's been hit or miss with them for the past few years. Some okay products, some not so much. But when they came out with this, had the opportunity to taste a sample prior to making a trade for that bottle, and I was pleasantly surprised with what was in there. But coming in at an 87, guys, at $140, Little Book Chapter 7, making a top 10. So I'm curious if this makes a top 10 for anybody else, but it's definitely been talked about. It's definitely a good bottle. So number 9, guys, we are at Clyde Mays 13. So I heard of these, but never had a chance to taste this. This bottle was a release for this year, and I didn't know really anything about them. I just knew that it was 120 proof MGP at 13 years, and I was like, oh, okay. Like, because I love MGP. It's high age, high proof. I'm like, it can't be bad. But this right here is probably one of the most off-profile MGP bottles that I've ever had. And I chalk it up to their process. I believe they take a barrel that's batched, then they throw like dried apples or something to that nature for what do they call it? Alabama style whiskey. But yeah, something to do with apples that gives it like this really, really nice, like peachy orchard, just flavor profile that reminds me so much of one of my favorite scotches on my bar, which is odd, right? Like Scotch, bourbon, completely different. But there is one singular note that is identical in this bottle to a bottle of Scotch that I have, which when you read the tasting notes on that, talks about orchards and apples and all that good stuff too. But this bottle was really, really good, guys. A little pricey, 130, but you're at that 10-year marker, or 10-year, $10 per 10-year, right? Age stayed at $130. 87 too, right? Just missing that 90 marker by a couple knocks, but really, really good stuff. Coming in at number 8, guys, we are at Corbin Cash. This is a single barrel pick from the Mash and Journey Whiskey Club, guys. This thing was killer. 7-year Merced Rye. I believe 136 proof. Like, the proof on this was nuts, but this was another one that was just completely different than anything that I've tasted this year. And it kind of blew my mind when I first had it. And Jeff loves this bottle as well. But it's just so different than conventional ryes that are on the market. Like, Corbin Cash is doing some crazy, crazy stuff with that Merced Rye. And look at that color too, man. 7 years, and that thing is dark too. All that flavor is just concentrated in here, man. And it's just a hell of a whiskey, hell of a pick from Jason and Scott. You guys did a fantastic job on that bottle, man. Top 8, 88 for me in terms of score out of 100. And it was only $100, right? So not bad, not 50 or 60, but I think it's worth every penny at $100. Let's keep it going, guys. Number 7, Copper and Cask again. And I can't say I'm biased because it made my list, but I did help pick this bottle. And I'll say everybody that has tried this specific single barrel has been blown away by it. It's another 8-year MGP, aged in Florida. But what we did is finish this bottle in a barrel from the store that I did the pick with. So it was finished in a Weller foolproof barrel, guys. And this thing is ridiculous. Cherry, spice, just so dark. You would think you're drinking like a 10 to 12-year-old, maybe even an older MGP bottle. Like, this thing is off profile to the fullest, but just absolutely fantastic. One of the best, if not the best, 8-year MGP single barrel that I ever had. Like, and we're talking about 8-year Pingries. Like, I put this up with the best, like, 8-year MGPs for me. You know, there's some Nash Tuckies that, you know, can maybe rival this or so. But this thing was just killer. I was like, holy crap. Like, really, really, really good. And I was happy that I was able to, you know, go along and do a pick. But coming in at $65 too, guys, to score an 89 on this list, you know, top 7. It was a steal of a bottle, 65. And you got to look at the small batch that we talked about earlier. Wasn't a single barrel. And that one was 79 or 75. So $10 more than the single barrel, which was pretty nuts, you know, when I seen that. But we're gonna keep this going, guys. We're almost at the top 5. Coming in at number 6, we are with another 4-gate bottle. This is a single barrel from my buddy Gary Franchi and Travis Neary. They run Pour Nerds. Got a little coin over here. But this right here is a 7-year Kentucky straight bourbon finished in Spanish Oloroso sherry and dark rum. And this thing is killer. Probably, well, for sure, my top 10 4.8s that I've ever had, if not close to top 5. You know, if we're taking out like the super LEs, like the Hazmat, MGP, you know, and maybe Eagle Thief out of the equation, this is easily in the top 5 that I've tasted from them. Like, that bottle is just killer. It's on par with, you know, some of the best, you know, Calvin's collabs that came out. So we gonna, what is that, at 89 too, guys, on that. A little pricey at 189, but, you know, it's not too bad considering what you're getting out of that bottle. So 89 at 189 bucks. I would love to have another. We're gonna talk about our top 5 now, guys. Moving it along. Elijah Craig C923 coming in at 5th for me at a score of 90, 79 bucks. You guys know that. They range 69 to 89 or so. But 13-year, 7-month, 132 proof banger from Elijah Craig. Probably one of the best in the last like 3 years from them. Killer bottle. Can't wait to see what they're doing with next year's products. We're going to keep this going. Number 4, guys, Larceny B523, which is probably a surprise for some people. I haven't really seen this make anybody's list, but this scored for me when I first had it at a 91, and I was like, holy crap. You know, at 69 bucks, man, scoring a 91, beating out majority of the other bottles that I've tasted. You know, it doesn't really get too much better than that. You know, Heaven Hill's doing some crazy stuff, so hoping that gravy chain continues for 2024 with some banger releases from Larceny and Elijah Craig, but we shall see. Top 3, guys. What's in the top 3? A Nash Tucky bottle for me, and this was a single barrel, if I can find it. A single barrel from Nash Tucky at 5 years, 127.6 proof. This thing was absolutely killer. Scored a 92 for me, 115 bucks. You know, it doesn't get much better than that, to be honest. They came out with a Stash 2 and a Stash 3. Yeah, I believe it scored maybe a couple points lower than the 2, but both banger bottles. Top two, we're looking at another. Actually, it wasn't even on the list originally, but Four Roses LE, 135th from this year. Scored a 92 for me. It is pricey. One of the most expensive bottles on the list, but this LE range, I think it has whiskey from 12 to 25-year-old in it, and it was stellar at 108 proof, 92. Very, 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 very good bottle, guys. And what's crazy is going to be my number one. Like, the biggest surprise for me when I have this bottle, guys. When you see it, you're going to be like, what? Well, I know those who have been following know how much I've talked about this bottle. But coming in at number one, guys, for me, is a bottle that is only, what, 2 years old, I believe, or 3 years old? Actually, that's not the right one. Here we go over here. It is a Hard Truth, guys. Single barrel. 127.2 proof. It was a distillery release that we got when we were doing our barrel pick back in May. Got to taste this at the distillery. Loved it then, but diving into it after having it for some reason was just drastically better than what it was when we tasted it. You know, and this bottle was only $69. When we were cashing out at the register, I was thinking it was going to be, you know, upwards to, you know, 100 or so, because like the caramel malts were around that price. You know, but to have a single barrel that rivaled pretty much everything that I tasted that day was just crazy, especially at the age, right? 2 to 3 years old, $69.99 to score a 93. You know, beat out literally every single bottle on my list. It's tough. Like, if I was to blind some of these against each other, maybe like this one won't win. But in terms of just sitting down, breaking it down, reviewing it, scoring it, it scored the highest for me for 2023 at a 93. You know, there's some bottles that, like I said, that may even be better in a sense, you know, maybe a better experience or so. I'm not sure. But like, when you break down everything that we review, like, we're breaking down experience, we're breaking down palate, mid, front, you know, finish. We take into consideration value too, right? Because you got to look at the Four Roses, right? The value's tough. You know, at basically $200, it only scored 1 point less, right? So this Hard Truth had max value, right? But is the Four Roses better? Probably in terms of taste, but the value for this just makes it just a better buy, right? If you can get something that's just as good, you know, for less than half the price, you know, you can't beat it. You can't beat it. But that's going to round out my top 20, guys. Hope you guys stuck through it. Forgive the long video, but it's tough when you're going through, you know, 20 different bottles. You know, it could have actually been longer, but try to keep it a little short for you guys so you wouldn't be too bored on this end. But hopefully you liked it. Curious to see what maybe your top 5 is. Drop a comment. You know, you don't got to put 20 in there, but let me know what maybe your top 3 or top 5 whiskeys of the year were. You know, I'll be anxious to read those comments and check that out. But thank you guys for sticking with me. Like I said earlier, if you're new, just hit that like and subscribe on your way out. Cheers, guys. Can't wait to see you next.
Jeff, just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello